Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa from Willard Library. Welcome to another genealogy research session. I have Matt. We're waiting a couple minutes to get started here and see if people get on in a couple minutes. But I have Matt from the Library of Michigan today.
Hello.
Hi. And he's just going to tell us about some resources that we have available as Michigan residents. And I thought it would be a good idea to bring somebody in to share what genealogy resources we have as, through the state of Michigan. So, Matt, can you tell us about yourself and what you do at the Library of Michigan?
Yes, I can. My name's Matt. I've been at the Library of Michigan for like 7.5 years, and my main role is the Michigan Collection Curator, but I do a lot of other things. I'm the donation coordinator. I help with our digitization program, staff the reference desk, answer questions, answer the various phone calls. There's a whole different types of tasks that I perform for different researchers, patrons who call or email us currently, since we are currently closed to the public. I think I answered the question there.
You did.
Okay.
So Matt's going to show us a little bit about the resources that we have access to. So do you want to share your presentation, Matt?
Yes, I'll go ahead and do that. Hold on a moment while I do this.
Just a couple of notes while he's doing that. When we were closed last summer and I got started with genealogy, I did use a lot of these resources. So I did sign up for a Library of Michigan card. So hopefully we can show everyone how to do that. And that gave me access to some databases that we don't have. So it was very useful. And I found a couple of things that I was looking for. So it was nice.
Yeah. Having a slight problem here, so I have to restart my PowerPoint. The share screen did not find it. So let's try this again.
We also have, or just a little bit of information. The Library of Michigan is in Lansing, and hopefully somebody, I don't know if people have been there or not, but it's a fun place to go to, not just for genealogy, but there's a museum that is really nice to go to, and it's a nice place to check out if you're ever in Lansing when they open.
Well, I'm going to try to share it right now. I'm having a slight difficulty here. It's probably resharing us instead of PowerPoint. Is the PowerPoint presentation up now?
Don't see it yet.
Okay.
Nope, I just see your computer screen.
Okay, let me stop sharing again and try it again. It doesn't seem to want to find. Let's try this. There we go. Now I can go ahead and begin. So you should be able to see the PowerPoint, I believe.
Yep.
Good. I'm going to start it. Sorry about that delay.
That's okay. Thank you.
Not certain what happened there. Just would not find the presentation, but we're good to go. Okay, should I get going then? I think we've waited a couple minutes for people to sign in.
Yep, you can go, Matt.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
For all those attending out there, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day this evening to attend this presentation here at the Willard Library. Once again, my name is Matthew, and I want to also thank Melissa over there at Willard Library for kind of arranging this presentation and contacting the Library of Michigan to have one of us, that would be me, give this presentation. And just kind of quickly, for those of you who may have missed my introduction, my name is Matthew. I've been at the Library of Michigan for over 7 years, and my main role is the Michigan Collection Curator, along with a few other different tasks. Throughout the presentation today, I have 3 goals that I hope we can accomplish. I want to familiarize you with some of the different print and digital resources that are available to Michigan residents and those Michigan residents who actually have a library card with us at the Library of Michigan. Second, towards the end of the presentation, if time allows, I'm going to try to share the screen and give a little visual tour of our website, just to point out a few things that I am going to talk about during the presentation so you can know where they're at and how to find them. And then lastly, third goal is hopefully parts of the presentation will encourage you to visit the Library of Michigan once we reopen to the public, and particularly for those who have not visited our facility before and for those returning visitors. So I'm going to switch to the next slide. Just real quick, brief information about what are we? Well, the Library of Michigan is the institution created to collect, preserve, and provide access to the story of Michigan. Now, we have 3 service population groups that we at the State Library serve. We serve state employees, the legislature, the courts, and so forth, libraries throughout Michigan, and the public, like you, who need to use or want to use our collections. So, there's about 32 or 33 of us, and, we have to really spread ourselves to help answer and help these different population groups. Now, we're one of the oldest working departments in state government, as you can tell by the slide. We've been operating since 1828 as a territorial library, and we really moved around a lot since then, from Detroit over here to Lansing. And if you look at the bottom of your screen on the right-hand side, that's just a image of the current building that we reside in. We're located on the left-hand side of that image with all the windows. That's the west side of the building. And on the east side, the right side of the picture, is the State Museum and the State Archives. And then there is the wonderful, I believe, white pine tree named Carl that stands in the middle of the 2 sections of our building. So it's a really beautiful building. This image here is something I like to show people because I think it shows a wonderful picture of the atrium on the library side, and it shows the building itself. And hopefully it'll encourage you to say, hey, I can come here and visit and do some research at this building. This image was taken, I believe, in the fall of 2019 as part of the Michigan Genealogical Council's Fall Family History event, where there is a little lock-in for a couple hours in the evening in early November for those researchers who attended the Fall Family History event if they want to get a few extra hours of research. And the Library of Michigan occupies the 2nd floor, and that's the floor where those center tables are at in the atrium. Most of the 3rd floor, and then most of the 4th floor, and then a little bit of the 5th floor. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Moving to the next slide. I want to give a real quick, brief overview of our collections here. We have 4 main collections. We have the Michigan Documents Collection. The Michigan Documents Collection, that's our mandated collection. So any department, agency, commission in state government that produces something for the public to consume, we are supposed to get 2 copies of that so we can have it as a legacy collection for researchers into the future. And these are things like annual reports of departments and agencies, compiled laws and rules, but then also some things like the Michigan History Magazine. I'll come back to that later on. We have the Michigan Collection. So we have the largest collection of microfilmed Michigan newspapers. There's Michigan periodicals, things like the Michigan Farmer, Michigan Architect. We have city directories, plat maps, atlases, county and place histories, cemetery transcriptions, unpublished materials. It's good to think about the materials in the Michigan collection as those being from commercially published institutions to privately published materials, and also unpublished materials. We have the law collection, or the state law library, located on the 3rd floor. And as a Michigan resident, you can call and email. And when we do reopen to the public, you can visit the state law library and use the resources there. And then we also have the Martha W. Griffiths Michigan Rare Book Room. And that's an amalgamation of different items that we've determined that should go into the rare room from the different collections. Now, since you are a captive audience, this is kind of my sales pitch here, since I am the donation coordinator. Also, if you're cleaning out your attics or garages or closets and you have books about Michigan, or atlases or plat maps about Michigan, pamphlets, postcards about Michigan places, and you're looking to find them a good home, definitely give us a call or send us an email, because I am always looking to add to our collections, to replace items that are significantly worn or damaged. So with that little sales pitch out of the way, where should a person wanting to do genealogy research, family history research, start at the Library of Michigan? Well, the best place is going to be our website at www.michigan.gov/librarymichigan. And the image below is a snapshot of the top part of the website. So at the top of the website, you're going to see like a news feature that'll give you updated information about our opening or closing status. There is a way to search our library catalog towards the bottom, as you can see, where it says Answer Catalog Search, and get access to the catalog to see what we have. Towards the top, there are some different menu tabs, and if you remember those population groups, there they are for the public, for libraries, and for state employees, and we'll definitely come back to that tab for the public later on. But there's also another way to search the library catalog. You can go to a browser and type answercat.org, and you would see the library catalog, what you see in front of you. And it's a typical library catalog where you can search by keyword, author, and title, and so forth. But below, you can see that there's a few other options. You can there's an advanced search call number, but below that, you can also limit to the Archives of Michigan, or to the Library of Michigan Law Library, or to the Rare Materials Collection. Now, what I want to mention a little bit more about the catalog is it is a shared catalog. The Library of Michigan and the Archives of Michigan shares a catalog with Michigan State University. So when you do your searching in the catalog, you're going to see items potentially from all 3 locations. Now, currently, Michigan State University is exploring moving to a new catalog later this year. So that will eliminate that that issue with the catalog of seeing Michigan State University materials as well as the Library of Michigan and the Archives of Michigan. But when doing some genealogy research, it really is important to make the catalog your friend so you can see what we have, because about 98% or so of our materials are cataloged, so you can see what we have before you call us or send us an email with questions, or plan any future research trips once we reopen. Now, here's just a quick catalog example that I put here so you can see a few different things. Towards the center, you can see the location and call number and status, and definitely the location so you can see where it's at. Like right now, you can see in front of you MSU Map Library or Library of Michigan. 2N. When you're looking at materials in the Library of Michigan, you will see a number and a letter like 2N or 2S or 3N, 3S, 4N, or 4S. The number represents the floor. 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor. The N is for north, the S is for south, and the dividing line is that atrium. And that's how the materials are arranged so that you know where to go on each floor. Now, below that is some different information from the catalog, description or note fields, and it's always important to kind of scan or skim that information over there because there might be important things in that record that I will show you in a few seconds. Here is a newspaper catalog record sample that I'm going to be showing you. On the screen, I have just done a subject search for Lansing, Michigan newspapers, and you can search to see what newspapers we do have by the county name, say like Ingham County newspapers, Calhoun County newspapers, Battle Creek newspapers. So you can see a results list. And it's important to look at the results list to see what materials, not just newspapers, that we may have in our collections. So for example, on the page in front of you, the third choice happens to be Lansing, Mich newspapers indexes. So there might be a few printed items that are some type of index to that newspaper, or perhaps even to another item in our collection. But for our example, I'll be clicking on that first choice, which gives us 44 entries if we look on the right-hand side. And that results list will give an alphabetical display of those newspaper titles. And if you want to view one of them, you would simply click on the title itself and you would get the record. Now, the few things I want to point out, like I mentioned before about looking at the catalog record and those note fields. For example, in this newspaper, you can see in the little tan area, it's going to give you not only a location, but what the library has, like a date range. It'll also give you location, for example, Library of Michigan microfilm newspapers. And there also happens to be another copy of this in the Archives of Michigan. If we look a little bit lower on the record, we see the two phrases continued by and formed by. So a particular newspaper, if it had a previous name or a name afterwards, they're going to be listed below there. So we see that it's continued by the State Journal and it's formed by the Lansing Journal, Lansing, Michigan, 1887. I'm going to move to the next slide because it's a large record. And also the State Republican. Now, newspapers, some of them tended to change names a lot. So looking at those notes fields will help you discern what newspaper I need to be looking at for the article that I want to find. But then also in the record itself, you might find information about its publication history, frequency, and so forth. Now, as I move to the next slide here, it is important to find out what newspapers we have. And if you don't know the title, you can find out what we have based on our county listing and our family trees. Now on our website, there's a content block that's called newspapers. It's actually that image that you see on the screen in front of you. And if you were to click on that image, you're going to see the top half of the page of what you see in front of you. And on the left-hand side, there is a link. One of them says Family Histories, but the bottom, the third choice, says Newspapers on Microfilm. And that's going to get you to our county listing. And on our next slide, a little bit more information. It's important that the newspapers are arranged alphabetically by Michigan County, then they are arranged alphabetically by town, and then alphabetically by title. Now, another way to get access to this county listing is, remember that for the public tab, well, there's a little down arrow next to that phrase, and it pulls up a sub menu that you see in front of you on this still image. And the choice circled in red is that Library of Michigan newspapers, and it'll get you to that same place, which will look a lot like this county listing. And then you go through the counties that you want to look at, and you click on that county, and then you will see that alphabetical list of cities and then the newspapers underneath those cities. So this happens just to be a quick snapshot of a part of the Battle Creek papers. So you can see a couple different examples, like the Battle Creek Inquirer from 1983 to 9999. When you look at the county listing, if you see the numbers 9999, that signifies we still get the paper and print copy. We do our best to get as many Michigan newspapers sent to us, whether they're daily, weekly, biweekly, or monthly. When looking at the county listing in front of you, you can also sort of see relationships between papers. We see that the Battle Creek Inquirer 1907 to 1918, then the Battle Creek Inquirer 1983 to currently, and then there's the Battle Creek Inquirer and News from 1940 to 1959. And similar names and very similar patterns of newspaper coverage by dates is a good indication that the papers are related in some way. But now as I move to the next slide, you can also look at see what newspapers we have based on the family histories that we have created, because they do show the relationship between papers, who merged and who, what different name it became. And those family histories can also be accessed through that Answer Library catalog record, because at the top of the catalog record, at the top of that tan section that tells you what we have, there will be a little link that will say Connect to Newspapers Publishing History, so you can see what the family tree will look like. Or if you're on our website and you're under the For the Public tab, and then there are those three choices, the top being Family Histories, you can click on it and you will see a listing of Michigan cities list, as you see at the bottom of the slide. And you can go ahead and you can click on the link that would contain the newspaper that would fall under the cities beginning with. And you then click on the newspaper you're wanting to see the family history. And for my example here, I clicked on the Lansing State Journal, and I chose the Lansing State Journal because it is a newspaper that has changed its name many, many times. Now, this just happens to be just a small portion of the first page of the family history, or this genealogy tree, if you want to call it that, because there's also a second page. But this gives you an idea of what you're going to see. You're going to see the different mergers or the different other additions, or it absorbed this addition, and as it moves on through its life. Now, it's important to have the name of the newspaper, because once we do reopen to the public and you're wanting to go to the microfilm shelves and pull the newspapers on film are, as I said, are organized alphabetically by town, and then by title, and then chronologically by date. So for a paper like the Lansing State Journal, it changed names. It was the State Republican, it was the Lansing Journal, it was the State Journal, and the Lansing State Journal. Those name changes don't correspond chronologically. So it's important to know what paper you have to be in when you're needing to find that article or that obituary that you want to locate. It's also important, one last point on the accessing film once we do reopen, to pay attention to the library catalog record for the newspaper title that you're interested in, because the record will also indicate if there's like a gap in coverage. Maybe there are missing issues, or there is a gap of missing issues. A great example would be for the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News. In the 60s and I believe early 70s, there were 2 to 3 time periods where there was a strike, and there was no paper being published. So there is a large gap of several weeks to several months. So it's always important to make the catalog your friend when starting out your family history research at the Library of Michigan. But let's go ahead and let's change topics, because there's a lot of things under that For the Public tab that you as a Michigan resident can access for family history research. There are many different content blocks under For the Public, like family history, the law library, the newspapers, government information, but there's also that Get a Library Card content block. And if you were to click on it on our website, you will, on the content block, you will see something that looks like this. On the left-hand side of the screen, library card, you'd click on the blue link to actually get you to a description of the library card. And option 2 is the one that's currently active because it's the digital library card, because there are several different resources that library card holders, that is Michigan residents who have library cards, different databases that they can access remotely. And then at the bottom of this page that I hope later on when I give you a quick tour that I can show you is the form that you fill out. You can fill it out online, you can hit submit, and the forms get routed to different librarians, and then within the next day or two, we fill them out, and then we return them to you. So one of the biggest questions we get are, well, what kind of newspapers access do you have with a library card? Well, there are several different databases that you can access. First, we have the Detroit Free Press. Again, it's under the content block called Family History under For the Public. And it covers 1831 to 1999 and all of its different names that the Free Press was under during that time span. There's a newspaper archives database, and that covers different papers around Michigan, primarily smaller ones. And you would access that once you're in the database, newspaper archives, by clicking on the map of Michigan, and then you would see a listing of cities. And you'd click on the city that you're interested in, and you would then see a listing of newspapers and their coverage years. And clicking on the newspaper title will give you a search screen that you can then search that newspaper. We also have access to the Michigan newspaper collection under newspapers.com. And then also the Michigan Chronicle out of Detroit. And those coverage years are, I believe, 1939 to 2010. So that covers our newspaper coverage that you can access with your Library of Michigan library card. But there are other databases. We have, as a library card holder, you have access to Ancestry Library Edition. Though you also have access to Fold 3. Now, Fold 3 is a database that focuses primarily on military records, particularly Europe, US, Australia, New Zealand, but there are also other nations. If you want to learn more about Fold 3, you can go to fold3.com just to kind of give it a glance over to see what type of material that they have there. But next, I want to talk a little bit more about MyHeritage Library Edition, which is the competitor to Ancestry. And the difference here is that access for MyHeritage Library Edition is not through your library card. It's because you are a Michigan resident. And as long as your internet service provider, your ISP, is a Michigan ISP, you can go to mel.org and you can access myheritage.com. So next couple slides, I'm going to talk a little bit more about MyHeritage because it's a great database. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with mel.org, it's the Michigan eLibrary. Some of you are probably familiar with the MELCAT, the interlibrary loan portion of the Michigan eLibrary, but there's also a database portion. And towards the top of your screen, there is that button that says e-resources, because there is a huge amount of databases within the e-resources, things like Encyclopedia Britannica. There's a database on repairing cars, health and wellness resource, and MyHeritage Library Edition. And if you were to click on e-resources and scroll through the alphabetical list and click on MyHeritage Library Edition and access it, you will see a page, a search page, I should say, that looks like what you see in front of you. Now, interesting, this page looks similar to Ancestry. So what I would say for different researchers wanting to find some family history information through this digital resource provided by the Library of Michigan, if you're familiar with using Ancestry, the learning curve is not that great. You will be able to navigate and use this database just as well. And I want to point out a few things. This main search page, as you can see, there's a name field, place, keywords. There's also an advanced search button towards the top right-hand corner of the search fields that you can use to get a few more searching fields available to you. MyHeritage is a database with over 6 billion historical records. Like Ancestry, there is a consumer edition and there is a library edition. And what that basically means for you, the user of this resource, you're not really able to build a family tree or receive matches with the library edition or collaborate with family members, but pretty much all the other records, give or take 98%, are available on this library edition for you to search. And there's all types of different records. There's census records, there's military records, there's records overseas from Germany, from Ireland, New Zealand, Australia, Brazil, and other nations. Voting rolls, other census records, some digitized books, and there's a lot. So I do encourage you to spend some quality time, grab a cup of coffee, maybe a scone or a Danish, and see what's here, because there is a lot. And it's also useful to not just use Ancestry, but to also see what MyHeritage has to offer. There is some overlap, and there are some differences. Besides using the search fields, you can also scroll to the bottom of the search fields and look at the map. The example is what you see in front of you. And you can click on the different countries and it will filter out all the other record groups and just focus on those records for that particular country. You can also browse the collection catalog by those categories on the right-hand side image that you see in front of you. There are different categories. I believe there are about maybe a dozen to 24 different categories, things like census and voter lists, family trees, birth, marriage, and death. And then within those categories, there's subcategories like U.S. Census, the Nordic Census, things like birth records, death, burial, cemetery, obituaries. And then you will see a More button that you see on the right-hand side of your screen to expand the categories further and provide you with search fields like keywords and name and place. And then you also might see the phrase show all, which will show all of the record groups that are within that collection category, like census and voter lists and so forth. Now, the one thing that I really do want to emphasize when using MyHeritage is when you're within a collection category or a subcategory or within a record group like UK and Ireland census or birth records, is to look at the top above the search fields, because sometimes you will see what is called a summary box. It's a tan or a yellowish box that has pertinent information about those records. For example, let's say in the United States is not the only country that has an issue with fire and damaging records. One of the record groupings from Ireland, I think it's one of the church record groups. There was a fire in 1922 that took out most of the records, so all that is left are the index cards, and that's notated in the summary box. Another example, there was, I can't remember the exact title of the record group, but the summary box stated that in the record group itself, these index cards were digitized, but they only had access to the front of the index card, because during the microfilm process, only the front of the index cards were filmed. They were not turned over and filmed on the backside. So the notation is it's unknown if there was any more information. So always read that summary box, and there are issues like fires and other things like that that might cause frustrations for researchers. And then, like Ancestry, when you're searching, you can always refine, and that narrow down by category menu will appear on the left side of your screen to the left of the results list. And for an example, as you see in front of you on the screen, you can narrow it down by whether it's military or books and publications, and filter down further to limit your results list. So again, behaves a little bit like Ancestry. So there should be just a little bit of a learning curve. But if you have questions on that, on MyHeritage Library Edition, definitely give us a call or send us an email. Now, I mentioned some of those databases that are that you can use with your library card. Well, there's a few things that you have access to that don't require a library card. One of them is our digital portal called Library of Michigan Digital. It used to be called Governing Michigan. It's a growing collection. Currently, it definitely is your one-stop shop for Michigan government, law, and legislative information. But with its rebranding and change to Library of Michigan Digital, we're slowly going to expand it. Currently, there are two other non-government related collections, one called Pave the Way, where it's a collection about the construction of the I-496 and the destruction of the neighborhoods to build that interstate. And there's also the Capitol Idea, where the Library of Michigan worked with the Capitol historian and her staff. They have a large postcard collection and information about the 3 different Capitol buildings and their grounds. And then also currently, myself and one of my coworkers, Bernie, we are working with the Presqu'île Library. They are digitizing some of their family history genealogy materials, and we will be hosting it on Library of Michigan Digital. So it's just another website to check periodically to see what information might pop up, because one of my responsibilities as part of my digitization work is to locate and help digitize collections within the Library of Michigan's collections that we can upload to the Library of Michigan digital portal. And just a real quick rundown of this database so you have an idea of what's there. This is just the entry page. On the right-hand side are some of the navigation buttons, like the About and Search and Browse and Contact. And if we were to scroll down to the bottom of that page, there's a search box. And if you were to either search or click on that collections button on the previous on the menu on the right-hand side of the screen, you're going to see the different collections in this tile format. So as you can see, they're predominantly government information, but there are those Pave the Way. It's in that center row, and then the Capitol Idea, which is in the bottom row. So different collections will have different tiles. So again, always check back. And to give you a quick sample, the results list will look a lot like this depending on the collection, with the title on the left-hand side and the different information that populates the different columns. This is a collection that's in the works because the Capitol historian and her staff are slowly going through and adding the information to fill out the other fields like location and date and so forth. But if you want to access any record within LM Digital, you would click on the title, and the record would pop up looking something like this, or depending on what document you might be looking at. This happens to be one of the postcards that I clicked on. And just a quick few things I want to point out, that when you're looking at a record within LM Digital, the record itself, you might see a scroll bar on the right-hand side of the image or the document. You might see a page counter at the bottom of the document or image. At the very bottom of the screen, you should see something like an item details or a transcript. that will give more information about the item or an actual transcript. And sometimes if you open a record and all you see is that gray space but no image of the document or picture itself, that's why there's that green download button at the top right-hand side of the image or document. You can just click on it and force it to download and on the screen in front of you. And as always, if you have questions, definitely give us a call or send us an email because we are happy to help. But there are also a couple other databases that are open and that don't require a library card that are, those content blocks under for the public. There's a legislative biography database. How is this useful for family history research? Well, as we see here in the title on the slide, there's some biographical information, birth, death, burial, maybe information about spouse and children, things that we can find through different resources like manuals, Gongwer News Service, maybe their personal biographical site in the legislature, things that we've compiled together. Now, it covers from 1835 up until the present, and we're adding more stuff since this previous election. So if you know the family member you're working on was a member of the legislature, give them a search, see what you can find. Also, the last database I want to talk about is the legislative before I talk about the last database, when you click on the legislative biography database, this is the entry page. And then on the left-hand side menu, you have the different options to search legislatures, view all the legislatures alphabetically, or view all the sessions. Now, the last database that I want to talk about is the Michigan Authors and Illustrators database. Like the legislative database, there's some vital information there, like death and birth, spouse, children and parent names, maybe a partial biography, a list of their writings, maybe a membership listing. This database is continually growing. We're adding to it when we can get information. A lot of it is self-reported, as that last bullet point mentions. So, maybe your cousin or your friend next door is a Michigan author. Have them contact us because we would like to add some information to this database. And again, it can be potentially useful for family history research, depending on who you are trying to research. Like the legislative bio database, this is the entry page once you click on the content block for the public. And on the left-hand side, you see that you have a quick search option and you have an advanced search option and the inclusion criteria. So I'm going to go ahead and forward to the next slide here because I want to wrap up this database part with just a few things here. When searching any of the databases, it's good to be familiar and be consistent with names and locations like the place and city and township. Knowing what wildcards can be used in the database, like question marks or asterisks. And for researching your family history, I think it's also good, before emailing or contacting us or planning any research trip, it's good to take stock of the information you have. What question are you trying to solve? What information are you trying to find? Thinking about, what types of records would contain that information. Are they vital records? Are they military records? Are they business records? So that you're armed with more information when you do call us, when you go to our catalog and search. But it's also good, I think, to think about family and friends. Has someone already built this wheel so you don't have to answer it? A great example I will give you is my sister. One of our previous family events, a reunion or something, she began to get interested in genealogy and stumbled on a second cousin whose family has traced a couple lines on my mom's side, but they've already done the footwork, did a lot of it, and even went overseas to Poland. So, reach out to family and friends when possible, but also think about local groups, Facebook groups, maybe contacting your local library, or your local genealogy society. Maybe there are local family groups that get together, maybe on Zoom now. Before the pandemic, here at the Library of Michigan, from time to time, the Chamberlain family would reserve a room, and they would discuss their research issues and help each other out. So definitely explore those possibilities, because there's a lot of good information and good things going on at your local library. But now, enough talking about some of the digital resources, because there's a lot of print resources and several 100,000 print resources in our collection. So I want to quickly go through them. So we have the Michigan collection and some specific examples that are useful for family history research. Things like state gazetteers, very useful for information about localities, maybe getting some brief history, names of churches and newspapers, elected officials, things like that. We have a good collection run. I believe it's 1875 to 1932. Proceeding minutes. Again, look at our catalog search for proceeding minutes. Maybe the family member you're working on was a teacher. Do we happen to have the school district library board minutes, or the minutes for the township or the city? Plats, or even a subject search, because we have a lot of information, on the auto industry, mining, lumber, and things like that. We have a lot of biography type materials that we collect in the Michigan collection. In the state documents collection, not just annual reports. The Railroad Commission is one example that some of them will list train accidents. Sometimes they will give some of the details. It's not inclusive of every accident, but I believe that they are either annual or biannual reports. And if you're researching the family member and you know that he or she was hurt on a rail line in a particular year, search our catalog. Do we have an annual Railroad Commission report? If you know the rail line, that's a good report to skim through to see what information might be available. But also in the state documents, you're going to have the Michigan History Magazine prior to 2009. I believe it started in 1917, either 1917 or 1921. But it was a state document, and there's a lot of good historical articles. Some of them are family history related, some of them are not, but it's a good research. But then definitely the Pioneer Collection. You may have heard of the Pioneer Collection. It's about a 40-volume set that was published between 1877, I believe, through the early 1920s. And it's a lot of first and second-hand accounts of events and places in early statehood and in pioneer days, list of record collections at different locations. There's some family history information, some genealogy listings. So it's a really good set of family history records. Again, it's a state document though, so it's going to be in the state document section and not in the Michigan collection area. And I believe there are two volumes, a compiled volume for the first set of volumes within the collection, and the latter set. So it's a great resource. This is just a couple, I think, fun pictures of the display area of the rare book room. There's a display being set up several years ago, and just some fun images there. The bottom right image is a tunnel book. It's a children's book. It's an accordion book. You open it up, and there is a bird, which you can sort of see in that picture, maybe not real well, but a bird that will drop down and dangle, and there's text behind it. So there's a lot of fun material, but there's also material there that can be useful for family history research, like the GAR encampment volumes from the Michigan encampments. Maybe you're really interested in rock and roll history. Well, there was the Cream magazine published out of Detroit back in the 70s and 80s, and it was the premier music rock and roll magazine. And then the SAR, Sons of the American Revolution, Michigan chapter. We've got, I don't know, 40 some odd volumes. It's the application materials. Just like the DAR, it's the application materials that a person put together to have a person become part of the Sons of the American Revolution. So again, there's a lot of really valuable information in our collection, but again, definitely make the catalog your friend and search to see what we have. So here we go. Here's our contact information. Our address and our phone number, 335-1477. We are answering the phone Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. There's our general email address, librarian@michigan.gov. If you want to send us an email. We answer our email questions, our website, and if you're on social media like Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Now I'm going to leave those or this slide up just for a little while longer until just a minute in case you need to write something down, because I do want to unshare this slide and then share a internet browser so I can show you a few things and give a quick tour with the last remaining minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now.
Yep.
So I'll be stopping the share of this. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the comment section while I am stopping the share and then beginning a new share, because I think it's really fun to see some of these content blocks so that you know where to go and what to expect.
Yep. Somebody did say thank you already, and she wrote down the website, so now she knows where to go for her research. So
well, that is good.
Yep.
So I'm going
Yep.
ahead
That's
and I will
good.
be sharing right now. It's always interesting trying to do these, pass offs from one
Yeah.
screen to another. So let's go ahead and see what we can see. See, it did it again. So I'm going to cancel that. Sometimes I don't know what it's doing here. Let's try this now.
Yeah, a part of me, I'm like, maybe this isn't a good idea to do this because now I want to go to the Library of Michigan.
I know, and
So,
hopefully we will. I'm not certain when. There we go.
Yeah.
So what you should see in front of you is the library catalog. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go to our website now. Now, if I can correctly type Library of Michigan. So we should see the website now.
Yep.
Excellent. And then there's those wonderful tabs. And as you can see, we've got our little answer catalog search box right below. But I'm going to definitely click on the For the Public tab, because you can always ask us a question at Ask a Librarian. It gets it to our email accounts and we answer them. But as I go down, we can see those different content blocks that I mentioned, like the family history, the law library, the newspapers. So if you want to get to the newspaper holdings, that county listing, that's the content block link you'd want to click on. If we move down the page, the notable books program, a little bit more about the Michigan materials. And as we go down to the bottom, there's the wonderful Get a Library Card. There's the blue button. If I click on it, it changes, goes to the page, hopefully. There we go. And as I kind of pointed out in the slide before, the information about the card itself, and as we scroll down the page, there's the form. You can fill it out right online, and at the bottom, the application status, what it is, renewal, so forth, a note, and there's a submit button. And it gets into our queue and we process them and we send you the quote unquote digital card. It's the library barcode that you can use to access some of those digital resources that I'm going to go and show you now. But then once we do reopen, you can come to our reference desk and you can get an actual library card, and they look like that card on the right-hand side of the screen in front of you right now. It's the front side and there's the backside image of the card. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click the back button. So I'm going to go back to those content block listings. I'm going to slide up towards the top to get to the family history. because here, the last thing I want to point out is I want to slide down some of the different things you can click on, but particularly the family history databases. So there's the African American Biographical Database by Chadwick Healy that you have access to, Ancestry Library Edition, Black Thought and Culture, Fold 3. MyHeritage is mel.org, but we have it listed here. There's a newspaper archive, the newspapers.com by Ancestry World Edition. Again, it's that Michigan collection that they have there. And then we have the Free Press, and then the Michigan Chronicle. And once you were to click on any one of these choices, you would then be prompted to enter your library card and your password that you would receive with your Library of Michigan library card. And this is the best place to come to see any different changes. If we've added a database or if we had to take a database down based on different licensing issues and so forth. So with that in mind, I think we're approaching the end at 7 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead, and if anyone has a question in the comment box, I'm going to go there and I will do my best to answer them for you. I'll say, you're welcome, Wendy, and thank you for coming. And I'll hang out for another couple minutes to see if anyone has some questions.
Those resources are really good to know. The more I read about genealogy resource and what people have problems finding, I think having access to newspapers is one of the most common questions. So
and the one thing I did forget to mention in the presentation when using newspapers, definitely look at the, I guess we would call them section D now, but it's the area of the newspapers that talked about the actual local, that so and so were visiting or they were traveling to. It's that family, it's that personal information that was reported in the newspapers, as well as the opinion columns, because if you know that your family member that you're researching has very strong opinions, maybe say about education or maybe about this war or this event, maybe they wrote an opinion in the newspaper because that was the Facebook of the time, the Instagram, the Twitter. This is how people communicated. So definitely explore the papers, not just for any vital records, but those social columns.
Yeah, a good idea too. Yeah. So I have another comment from Brenda, and Brenda is from the Calhoun County Genealogical Society, and she's been helping. She did our program last month, and I think that's a good reminder to use your local society too. So
Yep.
So, and also newspapers are good, and she pointed out good for doing house histories.
They can be.
So so great access to lots of information from the Library of Michigan.
Yeah, newspapers are just a invaluable source. It's like tomorrow I get to accept a large donation of newspapers, bound volume of newspapers from, as I said before, from out the west side of the state. And some of them I can't find that, I know we don't have, and I can't find them on microfilm anywhere too. So it's new stuff. Now we've just got to figure out how to get them microfilmed and add it to the collection. So the work never stops, getting more materials available for researchers like yourself.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us all the resources that we have available. I appreciate it. And one last time, as a reminder, if you do have questions, you can email Matt or at the Library of Michigan, or get a hold of me at Willard, and I can make a connection too and find out.
That works.
Awesome.
It all works.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Matt, very much for inviting me.
Hope it was good. Hope got some good information out of it, and hopefully one day we'll see people back inside the building.
Yep, I look forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks.